Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Branded Media Marketing Panel, talking about branded media across platforms. My name is Jennifer Betka. I am the Senior Vice President of Marketing from Wikia. We position ourselves as the social universe of fandom, and for those of you who are not familiar, we are a top 20 global website representing over 300,000 different fan communities on everything you need to know and then some. Topics like Star Wars or Marvel Comics or House of Cards. And one of the most exciting parts of my job is I get to run a program called the Wikia Fan Studio, where we bring together fan experts with brands and kind of create mutually beneficial experiences that often are generating original content. So that is the position and vantage point that I bring to the panel that we're going to talk about today. But really, I want to introduce the talented executives and professionals sitting on the panel next to me because they represent a wide range of innovation in the space. And I'd like to start the panel by allowing them to introduce themselves, and then we will jump in and be inspired. So to my right is, we have two Scotts and two Alexes. The first Scott, Scott from DDG.
I'd like to be glad to be the first Scott. Thank you. My name is Scott Singer. I'm Managing Director at DDG, which is a boutique consultancy focused on building Fortune 500, building startups and innovation practices within Fortune 500 companies. So our clients have been IBM, NBC Universal, Time Inc., Economist Group, Pfizer, Citibank, and effectively helping them build digital businesses to disrupt their own products and disrupt the outside community rather than be disrupted by everyone.
I'm Scott Grimes, hopefully not the worst Scott tonight, but CEO and co-founder of Woven Digital. We're a massive content creation and digital media company. We've been around about 4 years in New York and Los Angeles. I've recently raised around 20 million in a Series A, and got some big things coming on this year. So.
Hi, I'm Alex Lutz. I'm a strategist, VP of Strategy at Huge. Huge, if you don't know us, is a digital design firm born in Brooklyn. We've been around for about 10 years. We're a full-service firm, and we focus on creating breakthrough experiences for clients. So think about innovation, kind of three angles at once: the unspoken, unmet, and sometimes unknown user need, technology changes and evolutions that enable new experiences, and kind of the business and brand capability. So we're best known for HBO Go. Also did work for TED. We did NYC.gov. We work with American Express. Lots of big companies, both in Brooklyn. We also have 7 or 8 other offices around the U.S.
Hi, I'm Andy Marks. I am founder of a consultancy, my own consultancy, after having spent about 8 years inside of Edelman building a company called Matter. So it was an entertainment and sports integrated marketing company within the largest PR agency in the world. Most of what we focused on there was branded entertainment, content creation for our brand clients, acquisition of talent, large-scale, sponsored events, and really looking at all the different ways that our clients could engage more deeply with audiences across the media ecosystem, across paid, earned, owned, and social channels. What I'm doing now, before that, I actually notably was at a company called Hypnotic, which was groundbreaking, particularly in the area of branded entertainment. We did the Chrysler $1 Million Film Festival, the Terry Tate Office Linebacker campaign for Reebok, which is still considered one of the signature Super Bowl ad campaigns of all time, but that was actually conceived as a branded entertainment initiative, web series in the days of pre-ubiquitous broadband. So a lot of history in marrying brands with content. And currently working also as an expert in residence at Brave Ventures, which is a consultancy that was founded, an investment advisory founded by Gary Vaynerchuk, Jesse Redness, and David Beck. So happy to be here.
Hi there, I'm Ramsey McGrory. I'm president of Scout. Scout is a multi-channel sports network focused on team sports. So that's football at all levels, college and professional, basketball, baseball, hockey, lacrosse, soccer, and then in outdoors. So Scout is actually a 15-year-old company that had been acquired by Fox 3 months before they acquired MySpace. The founder came back at the end of 2013, bought the company back, and with additional investment and assets from Bob Pittman, who is the iHeartMedia CEO, we consolidated a sports and outdoors network, currently producing about 12,000 pieces of content, mostly delivered digitally with video, events, commerce, and some other elements.
Hi, everybody. I'm the other, admittedly less impressive Alex on the panel. I'm president of MoFilm. MoFilm is a global creative community. We have scriptwriters, filmmakers, animators, puppeteers, musicians that all make up our global community. We very simply create content for brands, everything from a 6-second Vine to an Anthem television ad to longer form webisode series. Our roots are in crowdsourcing. We've quickly evolved that platform into more of a curated approach. While we specialize in content production, we also have a strategic arm as well as a recently launched distribution platform focusing on owned and operated channels, primarily on YouTube, Facebook, and our own websites. And all privately held company, excited to remain so. Yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you, guys. I'm really excited to be hosting the conversation with you. Branded entertainment, branded media, it's a topic that has been discussed many times. In fact, I think you may have sat on this panel before or been a part of panel discussions like this many times before. So one of the challenges that I had in thinking about how to bring this topic to life is, where do we start and what's new today? And one of the things that I would like to pose to the panel is, the description, if you read it in the brochure, uses the word assault, which is a pretty provocative word. And it talks about the assault on viewers, like there's so much out there to consume. And so in that context, it's not just about the story and the good product, right? It's not just about the creation side of things. And the panel actually is titled Branded Media Marketing. And so that word, marketing, I'd like to focus in on just to kick things off and talk about marketing and distribution. So let's presume that we're all producing the most amazingly engaging branded entertainment. Where do you start? Who are the decision makers? What's the role of the brand? Where do you approach the mix of marketing and distribution to set these assets up for success? Anybody?
I mean, I think that interestingly, people often separate those two, the creative development and production, the creation of content, from the distribution and audience engagement side of it. And the two are really, in my view, inextricably linked. Content creators need to know, where it's going. To be effective from a marketing standpoint, you need to know who it is that you're reaching. To spray and pray or put it out to wherever and hope that you get an audience is because of the unlimited amount of media and touch points that is assaulting consumers. You need to be very strategic. You approach an audience and you can't assault them. That's actually a terrible word, but it's about gaining their trust, earning their attention. Attention is fragmented. Attention is finite. media options are infinite. So, so it is about sort of surgically and strategically identifying where does your content live, and then the role of the brand, the role of the, say, media buying agency and or ad agency
and integrate with the publisher or whoever is creating the experience because of those two huge factors.
Well, I think they need to see themselves. I think this was expressed already as media company. Brands are media companies. In branded entertainment, we've been in branded entertainment, MoFilm, it's been around a while. You know, we talk to brands about it. I've always advocated, you know, this is about asset creation. It's not, you can create a 30-second spot and it's great for a very short period of time. If you create content that's evergreen, that can live on, if you look at it sort of in economic terms, it's an asset instead of an expense on your balance sheet. And so that asset can be repurposed over and over and over again. We did some stuff with Hidden Valley Ranch when I was at Matter, which is a Clorox brand. And we worked with a lot of Clorox brand, but Hidden Valley Ranch, we did a web series with NBCU Digital, which no longer exists, but with that studio at the time, launched on iVillage. It was 30 videos hosted by Jenny Garth, all focused around moms and helping moms help kids see the benefits of eating your veggies, and little Hidden Valley Ranch always helps that process.
It's true.
It is true. So these videos were produced, they were distributed, and then we retained the rights, we meaning Hidden Valley and Clorox retained the rights to redistribute, to syndicate across the web. And they're still 5-6 years later, still using those videos in their marketing. That's an incredible, you know, return on investment. And that's taking control of the process.
You bring up a great point. It's all about return on investment. They are assets, absolutely. And the publishers that and brands that I'm working with right now, in particular on the publishing side, creating this has a long-term value is a little bit different than what they're used to in terms of agencies helping develop an advertisement that, you're right, has a certain shelf life to it. And as a result, to ensure that since this content and the creation thereof may have a potentially even greater expense associated with it if it's done in a multi-part series, just as what you were describing, measuring and assessing which way that content is produced and how it's edited is extremely important. So we're working with a publisher right now to develop a multivariate testing platform, both for banner ads as well as, and in particular, native branded content, where you can test in a relatively, with their distribution channel, with their audience, in specific demos. And this is a larger media company that has access to a number of different demographic groups, to be able to, for those brands, test before that even rolls out, because as you all know, the cost of development is huge. And, there are hits and misses. We want to try and limit the misses and accentuate that return on investment. But the return can be huge.
But the
I'm going to jump
operational
in for a
burden.
second. I'm going to jump in. Sorry.
Yeah.
You guys
There's an
will
opportunity.
have lots of opportunity to go deep. I'm going to shake it up a little bit because we have this topic requires a lot of explanation and example. But just to kind of keep things choppy a little, I want to go through the sort of quick twitch response to a couple of terms, if you don't mind. When you talk about creating something that's evergreen, somebody mentioned it, so it was a bit of a softball for me because the world that I come from right now is made up of 34 million pages of original content that's produced by fans, and those pages of content are evergreen. They're factual archives that you can use as reference material to figure out the name of the character and what the plot line was and how do you get to the next level of Skyrim, and so the reference material and evergreen has an accuracy to it and sometimes accuracy to the point of Ramsey on Sports. Sometimes accuracy in our day and age is an afterthought to something that feels a little bit more expedient and potentially more digestible. So quick twitch response to a couple of these questions. If you had to say kind of highly shareable versus highly accurate.
Highly shareable. I'm sorry. I mean, if it's, you can be, you want to be as accurate as possible, and you want to tell the best story. We consider ourselves pop culture storytellers, and you want to tell the best, and you can do both. But at the end of the day, you can be highly accurate and nobody watches it, and if you have zero distribution on it, you know, it's in the end not going to be very successful. I mean, you don't want to be completely inaccurate and creating things that are false, but at the same time, you have to have a content mix. That's the entire web right now is about a content mix where you have highly shareable things at the top of the funnel that maybe aren't the best things you've ever published or created, but when you get somewhere at the very bottom of that tunnel and there's very introspective, high quality editorial, high quality video to keep a user engaged. So it really is not just one type of content that's going to work to consume the mass audience. You need things that are highly shareable and then a lot of introspective, important pieces that people can resonate, and you're known for that trusted, authoritative voice at the end of the day. But you have to have both.
I think, you know, to your point about shareability, you know, right now, most content is not accessed through the homepage. Whether it's mobile or on the web, it's coming through your Facebook, you know, newsfeed, or through, you know, LinkedIn or Twitter, and it's coming to somewhere on a site. So while brand integrity and accuracy is incredibly important, you need to keep in mind how people are accessing content is through that sharing mechanism. That's how people are getting to your content, and if you don't pay attention to that, you won't be a survivor.
But I think I sympathize with the brands though, because we're talking about all the things they can now control and how much autonomy they have, but it's very complicated and it's really hard to manage. The operational burden it puts on them is extraordinary because something like accuracy versus shareability, you have to get legal review, right? Your legal department has to approve the content.
Talk to Brian Williams.
I mean,
He'll talk about it.
And also,
and it's very easy for them to make a mistake and want something to be viral and understand what the components of sending something viral, but they have, you know, brand equity at stake and a reputation, and so they have less degrees of freedom, I think, than we think they do.
Especially when you start talking about health or fitness or consumable products, there's a trust that goes hand in hand with what's being communicated. To eat your veggies with something that.
yeah, well, I was going to say that at Edelman, I think they're in their 15th year of the Trust Barometer. That's been their sort of signature thought leadership initiative for the last 15 years. And every year they look at trust around the world at different institutions, and trust and authenticity, especially in this era of social media and how dominant that is now in our lives and how we consume content. To me, you cannot, yes, shareability is important and people are accessing it through their feeds, but I think to your point about brands and frankly, I would say publishers and, you know, individuals who are sharing content, you know, authenticity and trust and credibility are still important. And I think that really cannot be sacrificed, because you see when trust is breached, how almost violent the reaction is on social media. And you've seen this in several different instances where I'm blanking on the name of the woman who she got on an airplane and
No, just Zeka.
yeah, right. So she tweeted about something that people didn't like, and when she got off the plane, I mean, it literally, you know, ruined her a lot. So those are important things that you need to pay attention to. I think alternatively, there's entertainment value notion, right, of content that, you know, I'm involved in. Certainly the brand journalism side, I think journalistic integrity and trust and authenticity is important, but on the entertainment front, I think there's opportunity for brands to let go a little bit. And so where it's not as much of a problem, so I wouldn't necessarily call it accuracy as much as it is, entertainment value, which then leads to shareability.
Yeah,
But I think, sorry to interrupt, one point that you brought up to put a finer point on it is that a brand has to realize that both their content can go viral in a positive way and that their integrity can be ruined just as quick
Quickly.
and violent
Right.
and fast
It's the flip
a
side of
fashion
that.
where they get to a point where it's very hard to lasso and control.
I mean, I think, it's a good point, but I also think the two sort of accuracy and shareability are not mutually exclusive, because I think, as what Andy is suggesting is, look, it's depending on the audience, admittedly, but it is about authenticity. It is about engaging and relating to consumers, and that is story driven, that is authentic in the way that it's literally tapping into local cultures that capture certain elements of what your city is all about, if that's in fact what the content is. That becomes relatable, that becomes shareable. I mean, there's thousands of studies out there that suggest that, shareable content has to arouse the viewer in some way, right? It has to be something that is stimulating, exciting, emotive. And one of the best ways to do that nowadays, particularly with that target millennial demographic, is through authenticity and is through storytelling.
That's very true. From my point of view, the millennial market is in many ways its own creator market. And they recognize that it's really easy to make crap up, right? And so
You'll see right through it.
it is very thin veil. I want to just give Ramsey an opportunity to respond to the last subject if you want to. Otherwise, I will actually jump into the creator discussion too.
I mean, answering
If you wanted
authentic
to, yep.
or the accurate. We had an intern who misidentified a mule deer as a whitetail deer, and we put his picture up on the wall and we threw darts at it for a month. So, and our community did as well. So on the journalistic side, absolutely has to be accurate. That said, there is journalism that isn't about accuracy. It's about perspective and inciting conversation. If you want to argue whether Josh Rosen is the quarterback for this year, that's a great argument, and you'll get a very violent debate on social media. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and I think for publishers, there has to be accuracy as a baseline. That creates the trust that makes people want to engage. After that, it's perspective driven.
Cool. So let's get some definitions out of the way, because you mentioned community. How many of you in your business, I mean, part of this is understanding how you even approach, how your business approaches the business of creating and distributing branded content. When you think of that word community, what does it mean to you? What is the audience that you call your community? Do you want to start?
Do you want me to
Ramsey?
jump?
Mhm.
Yeah. For us, it's easy. We are hyper focused on team sports, passions, participatory sports. And so it's people that self-identify themselves, and either that's geographic or activity-based. So for us, it is very easy because we create content that people are naturally attracted to.
And before I was at Huge, I ran a company called College Humor, which is a very irreverent, satirical brand focusing on men between 18 to 35. And we had a very passionate, opinionated community, and advertisers were tantalized and terrified of them at the same time because they had a very high bar for, let's say, authenticity. And anything that felt fake and anything that felt like they were being pandered to or exploited by advertisers was a miss on the site. So the key message that we would bring to advertisers is they trust us. They trust our editorial team. We know them. They know us. Tell us about your brand objectives and let us decide how best to communicate that to the audience, because you can't do it directly. We need to broker that conversation. And there were some really successful examples. We had a series called Prank Wars, which is about as sophomoric kind of humor as you can come across. And it was perfect. It was a perfect match for Axe. And they were fantastic. And we said, we will present you as the people bringing great stuff to our audience, that you made this happen, and there'll be this halo of glory around you because of that. And we don't even have to mention Axe body spray. And it was a really, this was many years ago, but it was a really successful marriage of a brand and content because they stayed out of the way. But it's very hard for them to do that and to trust.
Yeah, there's two aspects to this for me. As far as community, I think, Ramsey, you said passion. I think it is a shared passion and aligned interests, common interests, that as a brand who wants to engage with that community, it's important that you come at it with respect, and listening is a big part of engaging, is keeping your moving and listening what's going on and how people interact in that community, and then engaging intelligently with and thoughtfully. And when you do that, and when you respect that audience within that community, that's when the magic happens. And similar to the Axe example that Alex brought up, I mentioned at the beginning, Reebok and the Terry Tate office linebacker campaign, which again, before there was, there were these communities. There were communities online for sure. This is, let's say, 2001. And the notion of a brand letting go and allowing the magic to happen, it was very instinctive for Reebok to want to have it was based on a pilot that a filmmaker named Rostin Thurber had done. We found him and we found it, and he went on to do Dodgeball and some other big movies for Meet the Millers, which was, or We're the Millers most recently. But then he was an undiscovered filmmaker. So we acquired this piece and we showed it to the CMO Reebok and the ad agency at the time. And the ad agency had, it was actually Peter Arnell, allowed or suggested to the CMO that it's much better to allow the authentic sort of voice of this character, Terry Tate, and the way that the director approached the story, very kind of rough and edgy and irreverent. And that ultimately led to the success. They didn't shoot it with the notion that they were going to polish it up. They were going to bring in another director. They were going to do a rewrite. They were going to, improve the talent, get name talent. No, they left it authentically the way it was, and that's why it became such a success.
I think one interesting point to note is that the use of the word community is prevalent all over the place, from the C-suite to the CMO's office down to the brand manager level. But if you think back 10 years ago, we called these target demos, so cohorts. We didn't call them communities. And what does community imply? That implies engagement, sharing, discussion, which obviously social media has allowed to occur in a way that we wouldn't have thought of our target demo 10 years ago. And so keeping in mind that, going back to our shareability and clearly brand integrity and accuracy, incredibly important, but we now are dealing with communities. We're not just dealing with target demos.
I'm not so sure I totally agree. I don't know, Alex, maybe you might be taking this vantage point from MoFilm's point of view, but
Yeah.
who do you call your community?
Yeah, community is our lifeblood. Our whole platform is fed by our community, and there's a reason why it's okay, why we focus almost exclusively on showcasing and giving a stage to that community. When I say community, I mean, as I said in the beginning, the creatives, essentially. Because Andy talks about Terry Tate, and we do a lot of work with Reebok too, and that's long been celebrated as it rightly should, as a great spot. And he's right in that part of the reason why that was so successful was because the creative integrity of the idea was preserved. And the way our platform works and the way our community works is, the brands are amazing at giving them an opportunity to showcase their work, to work on these briefs. But most importantly, they're hands off. They know that look, in a traditional agency world, which a lot of us come from, you've got the creative, and then you've got the brand, and then you've got 15 layers of who knows what in between. And by the time that creative idea gets down to the brand level, it loses a lot of its integrity. Well, our model is all about killing off those layers in the middle and allowing for that creative idea to come through. Now, what's important is that this community, they're not just freelance, one-offer, amateur filmmakers that are just trying to be wildly creative. They're professionals. Like, they want this to be picked up. They want this to work. So it doesn't serve them any good if they go off brief or start creating things that are really abstract. They are so professional and so approachable when it comes to taking feedback from brands, taking feedback from us. And the net result of that is you've got an empowered and inspired and a creative community that is just chomping at the bit to do work for you. Now, we've moved into strategy where, we've got the content piece. Now we've got an exclusive community of creative directors and senior planners all over the world that have raised their hands and say, you know what, I love this stuff. And I want to work 48 hours and come up with an idea, something that the whole reason why I got into creative at the outset was to come up with cool ideas. I want to do that. I don't care if I'm even gainfully employed by an agency. I want to do that. So I think, the power of community is so compelling, and it's growing rapidly.
What I love about that example is when you are a young creator, you want so much, you're driven by the desire to succeed. And there's a nimbleness to that. In the way you're describing it, I'm imagining in my mind these very talented creators who are willing to bend a little bit because they haven't gotten too stiff in sort of their role. And you contrast that with somebody who may be very well established and call themselves kind of editorial. Not to say either of them is any less creative or any less talented, but in that kind of dynamic on that pendulum, it's challenging for the young creators because they're trying to develop their own DNA and their own identity while at the same time being nimble to and flexing to those opportunities. And then on the other side of that coin, where you have the editorial, they're maybe perceived as less nimble. And I just want to highlight, Scott, maybe if you could talk a bit about your world, because you're in the business of producing some original, innovative content, but you also are in the business of employing a little bit more of a traditional editorial structure. So how do you go about matchmaking, if you will, the opportunities that come in through your business development or sales team to your editorial organization?
Content too. I mean, we try to produce as much in-house content as possible. I think we have 4 new original series all launching in March that are all created through Woven Studio. But we also we also don't think we're the only authority on creative and what is great for our world. We try to program to very large scale communities around pop culture. So it's really hard in this world of scale, and it's an arms race in the media world right now to really scale a business unless you're programming around pop culture topics that are highly scalable, at least for our business model, sports and entertainment and tech. And those type things. And while we feel like we do a great job of programming around those topics and creating branded content, we also think that really great young creators who has a job of reaching that same audience every day, but maybe don't have it in such a structured form where they have somebody to help monetize or introduce them to brands or create opportunities for them. So our goal is to create all the content we can from an in-house perspective. And then when there's a great idea, just like a Netflix or HBO or anybody else would, we go out and buy the rights and or the creative talent around that particular idea and try to bring it to life through our distribution. Because generally it's somebody that is doing something at a pretty high level, just like Workaholics used to be, a show, I think it was Comedy Central or Funny or Die maybe, and then obviously blew up on Comedy Central. It's the same thing. We think that there's a life cycle for a lot of great content. It just gets boxed into a certain area. It's not scalable enough and it doesn't have a big enough audience, but if you let it breathe a bit, most creators just don't have that opportunity to get in front of a big enough audience to really see whether it's going to work or not. So
Alexandra, did you have an example of a great match between creator and brand that you've seen?
Creator and brand. I mean, I think the example of College Humor, in my mind, obviously it's it's my personal history, so I have special feelings about it. But I think the key is really understanding like what the sensibility fit is, as well as the kind of the rational piece, because there's an emotional piece as well. I worked at another startup called Food 52, and we started out, it was a content commerce business, still is, and we had a deal with Whole Foods from the very beginning because the ethos of the site was about helping people cook more. And Whole Foods, even though it was a tiny blip on the radar in terms of audience size, the sensibility was perfect, and they had the distribution on their site. But they needed content to be created that felt real and undiscovered and just human beings in their kitchens cooking. So we did a lot of that work, but I agree that the scale issue is a real one, because again, you can find the perfect partner, you can find the perfect bride, but if you're in a tiny little backwater, it's not going to achieve anybody's objective. So if you try to broaden out the audience, then the fit is going to be diluted. So I think there's always that kind of trade-off between who is the perfect partner for content creation, but how do I reach the audience that I need to reach?
I was just thinking about one, as you asked the question about creator and brand, and this isn't, I admit, this is not a Reebok funded panel, but it's a Reebok idea. It's funny how it's just been consistent around that, but it's, we did a project for them about 2 years ago, supporting their Live with Fire initiative, which was the big campaign strategy prior to Be More Human, which is out now. And I think it's a great example of creator and brand coming together for very positive reasons. And very simply what the brief was, it was all about celebrating people around the world who live life with passion, right? They live life with a certain energy and a passion that manifested itself in either the way they worked out, which played into their performance or fitness category, or the way they expressed themselves through music or art, which played into their lifestyle category, right? So the brief was very simple to our community. It was go find stories of people who live life with passion, live life with fire. And we ran 2 competitions. We had Alicia Keys involved as a big sponsor. I mean, we got over 200 submissions that came in. These incredibly compelling stories of a modern dancer in the Dominican Republic, a parkour athlete in the Ukraine, amazing 90-second to 2-minute stories that were very authentic, incredibly engaging. We had one 5-minute video about a former professional hockey player in Canada that raised money for a foundation by skating. He's now blind, skating across the country. I mean, these stories that you came out of the woodwork, you would be amazed at the quality of the content. And I think the reason why it was so compelling and so successful, because the brand brought it down to the level of the creative and vice versa. And it was really a pretty powerful match. And it allowed for the brand to execute finally on this idea of think global, execute local, and they could do it.
What role, if any, did the contributors of those stories play in the embrace and distribution and marketing part of that?
So, it depended upon kind of where, this would have been a good example of where there wasn't I don't think any of us realized how exciting and powerful this idea was. So we really didn't, we had, it was going to go live on, owned websites from Reebok, et cetera. But the response was so great that I think it was a little bit overwhelming. But I do know that, for example, one of the things that we do with MoFilm is when there's a winning filmmaker who wins a competition, they get flown to our event. And we run events all over the world. In this particular case, it was at Cannes Lions. And so one of the winning filmmakers was this woman who's this modern dancer from the Dominican. And she came, met the CMO of the brand, met the other agencies, the other brands participated, and it was the most uplifting experience for her in her life. So, and she got interviews thereafter. She produced more content for Reebok thereafter. I mean, Reebok was amazing at identifying talent and then giving them follow-on work. So it was, in that context, she was very involved in being a part of what Reebok.
Well, there was a story that went with the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It was very dimensional.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
That was cool.
I promised you guys that I would give you the opportunity to share an example of your favorite branded media. We've danced around the fact that we're talking about advertising. Excuse me. So is there an example that you would like to share that you haven't already maybe, of your favorite kind of branded media that you think really pushed the envelope and felt much different than an ad, better than an ad?
I actually thought about, this is going to sound maybe strange, Taylor Swift. She's an artist who is, I find, remarkable in terms of not only is she great at sort of the performance and songwriting, very talented and obviously very successful. But she did something around Christmas time that was remarkable and showed such a level of savvy that I think she's probably, probably one of the reasons why she's arguably the most successful artist right now. Anyway, I don't know if anybody in the audience has heard of what she did, Swiftmas, where she actually turned to her community, her various social streams, and observed the people, her fans, and selected fans that she was going to, maybe they demonstrated their dedication in one way or another, but she, to show loyalty back to her fans, basically handpicked people to receive a gift. She went shopping for the gift herself. This was all not obviously, but it was captured on video. She handwrote notes to each of those fans expressing why she thought that this gift was unique and special and appropriate for the recipient. And then she, in some cases, hand-delivered them, captured that all on video, and distributed that video across her social channels, and it got picked up everywhere. That is, I think, a really interesting example of the currency of social, the understanding as an artist and a brand, she's a brand, of the community that operates, her fan base, and very authentic way made a much deeper connection with that audience than she already had by taking this step. It just, to me, like, she's the queen of brands right now by doing that. I mean, it's just, to me, remarkable. So that's the example I would put forth. I have a million others in my head, but that's the one I think is.
I'm starting to indulge when CNBC Squawk Box goes to commercial. I indulge on a little Today Show radio. So it's, I was listening to the fact of another example very similar is an 11-year-old girl tweeted into DC Comics that she wanted more female heroes. And she was really missing the fact that there aren't enough female superheroes. And DC Comics tweeted back to her and said, we agree and we're working on it. And then actually went so far as to meet her and prototype a superhero around her likeness. So I thought that was a really...
Yeah, and that's the immediate feedback loop of media today.
Yeah.
Right?
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I can think of one that we're particularly proud of, and it was, I think, a great example of how far brands are thinking about their content and the type of content they're creating. So we do a lot of work with Unilever. This brand in particular is Cornetto, which is I don't know if anybody knows Cornetto, but it's an ice cream cone. Basically, it's not unlike a Good Humor bar here in the States. The U.S. is the only market where they don't sell it, but it's been around for a long time. And Cornetto, their target audience naturally is the teenage demographic, the millennials, right? And they knew from the beginning that their millennials, their audience is not watching television, and they're not, certainly not watching ads. So the challenge to us was think of a different way of engaging in this audience. Now, their heritage, Cornetto, is around love. So what we thought about strategically and creatively is you've got the heritage of love and you've got an audience of teenagers. And very simply, the idea was, what if we created an anthology of love stories? So what we did is we created this series called Cupidity. So just like you would have an office of lawyers or accountants, imagine if you had an office of Cupids. And these Cupids brought teenagers together. And so we told these love stories. We created, year one, we created 4 love stories. They were about 8 minutes in length. They all lived online. Year 2, we created 6 in 4 or 6 different countries. We've had over 500 million views. We've had a 45% view-through rate for an 8-minute film, which is pretty astounding on YouTube. There's been celebrity involvement where, for example, Lily Allen cameoed as a Cupid in one of the films. We're now doing an immersive theater experience in year 3. So the reason why I bring that up, by the way, you should totally check it out if you can. It's really cool. And the reason why I bring it up is not only is it great content and so engaging and compelling for that audience, but I think it's a great example of how far brands are going to think about the content they want to create and really think hard about how do we push this envelope and really engage with the audience we want.
How do we check it out?
I think it's like if you just typed, I don't know, Cupidity, Cornetto in Google, there's a whole website where all the content lives. Sit down with a glass of wine, you'll be entertained.
Any other thoughts or examples you guys would like to contribute, share?
I'll throw out 2 that are somewhat similar to what Andy talked about. I think Dove's Real Beauty campaign. I think Real Simple has an effort around women IRL in real life. For me, they're doing similar things, but one is clearly an advertiser and one is clearly a publisher, going back to what I said earlier, that advertisers have to be publishers and vice versa. And both are also leveraging social in that promotion. So I think those are 2 great examples. In the sports category, for us, it's bread and butter, meat and potatoes, Ram Truck, who sponsors TV shows that we do, and Tailgaters, because they want to be where men are doing things with their kids and where they're passionate. So nothing super sexy about it, but they love that kind of integration when men are engaged with family and doing what they love doing.
So I have a question, Scott, because you are in the business of advising clients on whether or not and how they should get engaged in the creation of original content or branded media. What are some of the filters that you use to advise clients on whether they get in or get out, or how they approach the decision to invest in something like this?
It's paramount that they invest in this. Certainly a publisher is facing today, particularly if it's a legacy media company that has a product that is consumed in another channel other than on the web or mobile web, which is growing by, I know that, but in 2015, we're going to go from, let's say, 6% of the total worldwide advertising volume, it will be in mobile. By the end of this year, it's projected to be 10%. By 2018, it's about 25% of all global advertising dollars will be in mobile, and about half of that will be display and half of that will be search. So that display and video and other is incredibly important. And these are IAB numbers, not mine. But as it relates to developing content or developing advertising with a brand, it can be inexpensive, but it can also be, if done well, a very high margin product. And that's the biggest challenge for a traditional media company moving on to the web, or even a native web or mobile company that's trying to obviously cover their costs and show a nice return for whoever it is that's investing in them, whether it's a venture capital firm or a large corporate. And so being heavily involved in particular products, advertising products that get and engage an audience, do it in as viral a potential way is, as I said, of paramount importance. And so the work we do is not only to help them think and get out of their own way, but to measure those returns on investment. And that goes back to this multivariate testing platform that we're in conversations with people at at WPP and Havas and others who are demanding this need on behalf of their clients. It doesn't exist out there. Just, take a very simple banner ad, costs about $100,000 to make. You don't know whether it's going to work or not. Maybe you get 2 ads out of for $100,000. Now think about branded content. It could be inexpensive. Clearly the Taylor Swift example was a camera and an individual, and it was done, it wasn't the highest production quality, but it had incredible bang for its buck. Can you do that? Or does it have to be something that is significantly more, edited, produced, et cetera? But regardless, it's incredibly important.
I think it comes down to, somebody said it earlier, content in context. So the Taylor Swift example, to your point, is one that, works. The authenticity of her and it being just, sort of camera, low rent camera kind of following her, and carve that up and send it out. And that was very impactful and very effective for many brands, because, they're multi-million, some cases billions of dollars in advertising. Production value is hugely important, and how and where the content is going to live is important. But in calculating for clients, brand clients, and sitting on the other side of the table representing, I worked extensively with Lorne Michaels' company this summer, Broadway Video. How do you approach a brand, and at what level, at what investment level are you asking from them? If you compare content creation, you're looking at the cost of making a 30-second spot is, on average somewhere around $500,000 per spot. And you could do, for $500,000, you can do an entire, digital series, and have very high production value. Mm-hmm. So, but, brands want to know that the stuff that they are putting out there is of high quality, that's to their standard as a brand. Did some work before I left Matter with Activision. We did a web series with them on YouTube for kid gamers. And, that's a company that spends $4 million to produce a spot. And so working in the world of YouTube for them, not so easy.
Very disorienting.
Yeah, it's like, whoa.
You're going to see a lot more accountability around branded content in the next probably 12 months. You'll see the biggest digital publishers with the largest audiences building a lot more technology around being able to measure the effectiveness of not only all their own content they're producing. So I have tons of information every day about all the users on my sites, just in terms of what are they engaging with, what are they commenting on. But from an advertising perspective, we also have technology that kind of crawls the web and looks at viral trending topics, velocity of certain things. And so we're able to let advertisers know in real time, almost daily, how something's doing from a branded content perspective. BuzzFeed does a lot of this as well. And I think you'll start seeing, from a distribution standpoint, you'll start seeing just a lot more measurability and real-time numbers around how that branded content is doing, what's the interaction rate, with the not only shares and likes, but the commenting, but being able to aggregate all that data across different platforms into one place. That's called the Thread platform, what we do. But that's going to be, there'll be a lot more accountability, in a good way though, in a good way, so that people know the effectiveness. And because I think it's generally a lot more effective than even everybody on this panel gets credit for at the end of the day.
There's no excuse for not being able to measure this.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, because, well, at least in a digital world, which we're primarily talking about here, the ability for that feedback loop is obviously, it's almost instantaneous.
Well, even in
it doesn't
TV
exist.
though, that nowadays it's about multi-screen engagement. For many of the networks have whole divisions. My partners at Brave are from that world of social TV and second screen. So every show now is creating those kinds of experiences, moving audiences from one screen to the other and back, and then being able to measure.
And the data on that second
yeah.
screen is
Absolutely.
so much. I mean, so much more about your user watching it on their laptop versus the TV.
But I think the conversation now about viewability, the fact that advertisers are saying, well, you have to be able to see our ad for a certain period of time. It's not very long. Can't be below the fold. Like there's a lot of sleight of hand that goes on as well in the world. Like you're below the fold and the page didn't fully load. No one saw your ad, but that's an impression. So I think advertisers are getting
Absolutely.
smarter
Absolutely.
and they are demanding more accountability, and the technology is there, but it also has to.
And you're going to have to create that,
Right.
you're going to have to create that
Right.
video content that can live in that 5 to 10 second environment. You know, if you're going to have a pre-roll of something and you can continue on to a site after a certain number of seconds, there's no reason why you can't get a message across in 10 versus 30. And, you know, I think that's,
Or
you know,
6.
Or 6, right.
Or
And so,
10 and then 6 and then 3.
and that's true. And I think, you know, I want to add one more comment. You know, we're talking about the second screen. A lot of my clients are in the traditional broadcast world, but I think they realize that the television is actually the second screen now.
Exactly.
When you're looking at a millennial, I've got 2 kids that are teenagers. I mean, they've got the television on. That is the second screen in the room. Maybe it's the third because they've got their laptop, their phone. They're trying to connect with, you know, their friends, whether it's Snapchat or Facebook Instant Messenger. They're figuring out ways to do this that don't cost, because not everybody has an unlimited data plan.
We did user research.
so-
It just, this is a very quick comment, but we did user research with 16 to 22-year-olds. And one of the questions was, how much time do you spend online? And they found that question puzzling. They didn't really understand what that meant.
They don't, they're never offline.
Because
They're
there is no
always
offline.
connected. That's
Yeah,
right.
we did similar research and we had a nice combination of life things that go on, whether you're in church or you're at school or you're doing your homework, and the variety of places that were considered not, when I'm not online, were very few and far between, including being at church.
So the challenge is with kids
So
to get them to not open up their phone during some of those time periods.
Right. So
Holidays are challenging.
We only have a few more minutes left on the panel, and I think that there's some people in the audience that want to have the opportunity to ask you all some questions. So I know I saw somebody walking around with a microphone, but he's disappeared now. You're going to have to speak very loud. Okay, well, while you're waiting, I do have one other question for the panel. We've been talking a lot about branded entertainment, and it seems like it's often in the form of video and TV and events. Yeah, I see that. Thank you. But nobody's mentioned branded entertainment in the form of experiences such as games. Have you started to think about bringing game development expertise into your companies? Is that something that you're dabbling with?
I mean, well, there's a few aspects to that. One is games, you know, actual games.
Yeah.
So we did just quickly, partnership with Anthony Zuiker, creator of CSI, who has CSI Cyber, just started last night on CBS, CSI franchise. He was interested in cybercrime. This is several years ago. And my client at the time, as part of Edelman, was Norton, the antivirus software, cybersecurity software. They were looking to make cybercrime sexy. Anthony was very interested in cybercrime as his next crime genre. We put together a 90-minute movie called Cybergeddon, launched on Yahoo. Part of that was a game, and it was part of the you know, all surrounding the notion of cyber protection and protecting the stuff that matters, which was Norton's tagline at the time. And so in that respect, we did a downloadable game app, iOS and Android. It was part of a multifaceted experience, but so games definitely are part of a multifaceted experience. There's also the notion of gamification of engagement. So working on a project right now with a major media company that involves the earning and spending of points in the context of doing social good. And so you do things and you engage and you earn points, and then you're able to spend them to support important issues use social and actually make a tangible impact. So in that, it's all about this gamification of the experience and how do you keep consumers interested and coming back and continually engaging. And it's all about sort of the gamification of that experience. So yes, gaming gamification is very much a part of what we think about when we're developing these programs.
So my question is that one of the things you guys have all raised is a very interesting point, critical tension of creativity versus serving the, what the audience already knows or wants, as opposed to doing something that takes the next step forward and an advertiser supporting that, as opposed to doing everything that's sourced from the audience. And I want to talk about, at one time when we didn't have such accurate data, down to the every eyeball we can track, people would take chances. We wouldn't have Bob Dylan today if we only depended on what American Idol thinks is real singing, which most of it isn't. It's just lounge music. So where would the Bob Dylans, how do you guys make a decision to go beyond just sourcing the content needs based on your audience's already preconceived interests as opposed to pushing them into new and different realms?
You can try new things, but they'll let you know quickly if they don't like it. I mean, that's the good thing about publishing. Yeah, they'll tell you instantly if something's terrible and sucks, or if it's an interest that they just don't have. If you have a wide enough, distribution in terms of the different likes and interests that people have, you're likely to be able to push it. We like to push it a lot. I mean, we have all types of content. We definitely push the envelope on some stuff. We try to push brands as much as we can. You're trying to reach a millennial audience. 65% of our audience is all mobile. So, I mean, when you're talking about 10% in terms of the actual ad sales side, like if you call yourself a millennial publisher and you're not at least in that audience being mobile, you're probably not really millennial publisher, but you have to do things to wake them up. You have to do things to engage them. We try to get people to engage all the time. So, we have 11 or 12 tentpole events from South by to Comic-Con where we use Uproxx and some to Chive and BroLevel, some of our big brands, to interact, to create these offline experiences and really make sure that that you're programming on a daily basis to what they want, but that you're also pushing brands to get really uncomfortable. We're pushing Miller Coors and Budweiser right now to get really uncomfortable, like to do things that, that isn't the same thing you've done for 10 years. Get way out of it. And it's not all going to work. A lot of it's going to fail. Things aren't always going to work, but the things that do work, you're going to be shocked at how well it actually works vis-a-vis you're just at the same traditional 30-second spot you have run that is not reaching that, key consumer that you're trying to now reach.
It's harder to get out of for a brand to get noticed, I think, today, particularly in that, millennial, world.
Especially if you're not a fun brand. There's some brands that are super fun and they're like EA and Budweiser, Miller Coors, and Axe and Red Bull. That's easy.
Crest toothpaste.
Comedy Central. We all the time distribute content for Comedy Central. A lot of it we create in addition with them, and it's great. It's the other brands that are not so sexy that's where it gets really hard to get creative.
Well, I just think that digital platforms today give so much more opportunity for audiences to discover talent. MoFilm was all about the discovery of new talent and crowdsourcing talent. As a Hypnotic, we were very much about emerging filmmakers and giving them an opportunity to be discovered by audiences, brought to you by a brand or enabled by a brand. So I think the measurability and the data, yes, you can definitely overlay it. And, I often talk to content creators that are interested in this subject about, those that like Zyker I mentioned, who embrace, sort of the notion of technology and how to employ that in storytelling. But ultimately, you have to figure out what the balance is between, using that data. How do you use it to inform the storytelling process without killing the creativity?
That's the hardest.
There's also, everything is discoverable, but the attention span is much shorter, right? You get a spike and then it's gone. I mean, I read recently this idea of Spotify. It used to be if you wanted to build a collection of music, you did that passionately, one record at a time, one CD at a time. Now you spend a couple of focused days and you have all the music in the world right in front of you. So everything is there, everything is discoverable, but creating longevity, creating loyalty, creating sustained attention is still extremely, extremely challenging.
And just to add, like one of the things that's so compelling about, today and these platforms and these communities that all of us work with is, it isn't about, to use the overused phrase, putting all your eggs in one basket. You're sourcing or you're generating a range of interpretations. One of the things that's unique about our platform is that, and I've heard this from our creatives, that what they love about it is that it's not something where, like, you may pitch an idea to a brand and they may say, you know what, I don't like that idea enough, so you're not going to get a production grant. Well, the creative can say, I really like the idea and I want to execute it. And so they can go through and see it through to execution. And I can't tell you how many times a brand has told me, if I saw this script on my desk, there was no way in hell I would have greenlit it. But when I see it in its finished form, it's amazing. And what's really powerful about that is that it isn't, the brand doesn't own all the answers. The creatives own all the answers. It's when it all comes together around a really cool brief that is inspiring and exciting. And oh, by the way, like if I'm running a brief and I spend, $100 grand and I get 5 pieces of content, I can test and learn and iterate off of that. So I'm not necessarily throwing everything behind one particular piece of content that I hope will work. I've got a range of stories that I can test and I can learn off of. So I think that's what makes it really exciting. And we'll find that next Bob Dylan as a result of that.
So we're at conclude. Yeah, one more question.
Super quick, is there any content that's off limits to be branded? Did you guys hear that? Is there any content that's off limits to being branded?
I don't think so.
Well,
Adult film.
Yeah, that's what I
guess
that's all I can think of.
We do a lot of work with Durex, so there's a natural connection there, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what I thought of when you said that was not adult films, was the slippery slope of native and brand journalism.
News.
Yeah, news.
Very hard.
News is tough to brand, though brands are publishing their own news or their own content that's relevant to them.
Complex as a site, news.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's
But within the environment of, let's say, an NBC, CBS, CNN, any of those, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, et cetera, the fact is that it's sponsored content, and there is a second, other than being informative, there is a second purpose to that, and the consumer is very wary.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why
And
they
it's
all
very
created,
challenging.
Yeah, that's why they all created real estate and living sections and
Right.
travel, because those are things that you actually can
Can brand, yeah.
whereas the meat of the news you can't.
Ramsey, do you have any thoughts on any content that should not be branded?
Wow, look, my first thought was obviously adult, and then the news, but I was thinking the same thing, which is they're not trying to embed themselves into the news. They're trying to promote their brand around people that have the demographics of wanting to be, up to date on the news and consume it, whether it's digitally or through television.
Yeah, we're actually seeing, you're right. I was reading an article today coming down here on the train that a lot of the big publications in Europe are actually looking at ways to incorporate branded entertainment or branded content into their work, but doing it in a way very much out front, acknowledging the fact that it has to be woven in a very creative and authentic way. It cannot be, brands at the forefront, but it's very much a target area for these brands. So we'll see.
There you go. Woven got a pitch.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your ideas and energy on the panel. Thank you in the audience as well for your questions and attention.